Aloha and happy Wednesday afternoon. You've got Casey Lund and Mark Carpenter here in the H&N Digital Center, filling in for Jonathan and Ashley. Ashley's on assignment, Jonathan taking some time off. And we got your coronavirus coverage coming up in just a minute, but we're going to start with today's top story, right, Mark?
That's right. 3 former high-ranking city officials have been arrested in connection with the Kealoha corruption probe. Lynn Kawano has the latest from the federal courthouse in Kapolei.
It all started about 6:30 this morning. Roy Amamiya, the former city managing director, was the first to self-surrender here at the FBI office in Kapolei. About 7 o'clock this morning, Max Sword, the former chair of the Honolulu Police Commission, then showed up. He also walked into the building to self-surrender. We did ask him if he wanted to speak. He was polite and said he did not have any comment. After that, Donna Leong, the city's top attorney, back in 2017, the top civil attorney, head of corporation counsel, when Louis Kealoha was paid off $250,000 to retire. Kealoha was the police chief then, but he was a target of the Department of Justice federal investigation. That payoff was in January of 2017. Since then, Louis Kealoha was found guilty by a jury and then pleaded guilty. So he is serving time at the federal detention center in Sheridan, Oregon on charges of conspiracy, obstruction, and bank fraud. The payoff was very controversial. Taxpayer dollars given to a man who was already an investigation target of the FBI. Of the 3, Donna Leong was the only one arrested in the parking lot. We're not sure why, except perhaps she refused to get out of her car and walk into self-surrender. FBI agents walked up to her car, told her she was being arrested, put her in cuffs, and walked her in. Donna, you have anything you want to say, Donna? This is still a developing story as all 3 had court appearances this morning about 11 o'clock. We'll have more on that on later editions of our newscast. I'm Lynn Kawano, Hawaii News Now.
We begin our coronavirus coverage with the latest numbers from Hawaii's State Department of Health, reporting 3,512 new coronavirus infections and 5 COVID-related deaths. The Omicron wave may soon be coming down, and if that happens, cases are expected to drop sharply. Some health experts say Omicron may simply be running out of people to infect.
I think in many respects, Omicron, with its extraordinary, unprecedented degree of efficiency of transmissibility, will ultimately find just about everybody.
Researchers are hopeful the UK's current downward trend of daily cases is a sign that the surge is subsiding there. Hospitalizations in Britain are also falling, and experts say the U.S. could be next. It's similar to what happened in South Africa, where Omicron was first detected. In a month, the wave brought a record number of infections to the country, then dropped significantly. And more research says Omicron sends fewer people to the hospital. A new study of 70,000 COVID patients in California found infections were half as likely to lead to hospitalizations compared to Delta. People are still going to hospitals, though, because the virus is infecting so many. But even our leaders here at home believe the crest of the Omicron wave in Hawaii will happen soon.
We really believe this is going to peak based on all of our discussions with our healthcare experts sometime in the latter part of this month. We need to get through this period of time.
There are 324 COVID patients in Hawaii's hospitals right now, but staff shortages are making things worse. Emergency Medical Services reports a strain on ambulance crews. They're responding to about 300 calls a day with 10% of their staff out. And they're asking the public to stop calling 911 to get a COVID test.
The city has their testing sites. That's the most appropriate place for you to go get testing, not the emergency room.
All we ask is that you save our ambulances and our EMS crews for 911 emergencies only.
And a warning, the high volume mean you may have to wait longer for emergency care. It took Oahu ambulances an average of 24 minutes to move patients into an ER on Monday.
The state now says that infected students can return to class after 5 days rather than 10 days, and close contacts of those students that are fully vaccinated no longer have to quarantine. But it's too little too late for some campuses in Hawaii who have been dealing with really high rates of absenteeism. Our Jelani Martinez has more.
I believe school should continue, even to the point of wearing masks. There's so much of this that is such a letdown.
Pro surfer Billy Kemper, who has 2 children at Sunset Beach Elementary, says his family and many others are now scrambling to cover work and make sure their kids can do distance learning.
And all of a sudden you're just going to flip the switch on them, not give them not even 24 hours, you know?
And that trickles down. Now they got to take off for work. And now that person suffered. They could be a nurse, they could be a lifeguard, they could be a fireman.
The Department of Education says this campus has 24 confirmed infections, about 6% of all students and staff. Principal Eliza Elkington explained to parents in an email that because of the guidelines on close contacts, about 175 students and 18 staff members were absent the past 2 days. The principal said she thinks teachers can reach more students through distance learning and is hopeful this will slow the spread of COVID.
We have a lot of our staff members out. We've had spread within classes, and I believe she's made a very thoughtful and wise decision.
My daughter's in 5th grade, and this week she's only had 10 kids in her whole class, in her whole grade. We've tried to do all we can to keep our kids safe. They're vaccinated, they wear their masks to school, you know, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess.
The state has been letting each school decide how to deal with the COVID issues. A handful have gone online. Others are occasionally putting kids in the cafeterias or gyms.
This is a problem that didn't have to happen, and it's just gotten worse by a lack of planning.
It's anger, it's disrespectful in a sense to the parents of this community that have been working hard to get our kids, because our kids in their school, we learn distance learning does not work. These kids suffer.
The interim school superintendent is among those pushing hard to keep schools open. He's hoping to turn a corner soon.
Preliminary numbers are showing teacher absences are starting to decline slightly from last week's level. It's still about 12% though of our teacher workforce.
The State Department of Health is now advising people who got the Moderna shot to get their boosters 5 months after their last vaccination instead of 6 months. This follows the CDC guidance. Both Pfizer and Moderna now have the same wait time between the second and third shots.
The Biden administration announced it is planning to distribute millions of free COVID tests to schools around the country in order to keep them open. Skylar Henry explains.
The CDC says the Omicron variant is now responsible for 98% of new COVID cases in the U.S.
The sudden and steep rise in cases due to Omicron is resulting in unprecedented daily case counts, sickness, absenteeism, and strains on our healthcare system.
The U.S. is averaging 751,000 cases a day. That's up 47% from last week. Nearly 20,000 daily hospitalizations and 1,600 deaths a day.
I suspect the deaths that we're seeing now are still from Delta.
The surge collides with cold and flu season, and many pharmacy shelves are bare. But there's reassuring news about Omicron, too.
If you're vaccinated and if you're boosted, the chances of you getting sick are very, very low.
The Biden administration announced a plan on Wednesday to send 5 million rapid tests and 5 million lab-based PCR tests to schools nationwide to help them stay open.
These 10 million additional tests available each month will allow schools to double the volume of testing they were performing in November.
Chicago children returned to classrooms Wednesday after a 5-day standoff between the teachers union and the city over safety protocols.
We want our kids to be safe. We also want our kids in school. Glad that they were able to come to an agreement.
Minnesota's governor is moving $40 million to help state hospitals with staffing shortages. And the U.S. Army is storing cash at its pandemic recruitment problem, offering a maximum bonus of $50,000 to highly skilled soldiers who join for 6 years. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
And we have Howard Dykes in the Digital Center with us this afternoon. And Howard, I wanted to ask you a little bit about cruise ships. We saw another one at Honolulu Harbor, and I know we've covered this extensively on Sunrise, but I kind of wanted to dispel some myths or maybe dive a little deeper into this because it is causing people concern. But really, as I learned recently, not all of those passengers are disembarking. Of course, there's COVID protocols to keep the ones that are infected or at exposure on board. But even during normal circumstances, it's not like all the passengers are disembarking and going into the community, right? Can you clear some of that up?
Yeah, that's the dirty little secret of cruises is that most cruises, the passengers go for the things they can do on the ship, especially eat. And there are a lot of people who just don't do a lot of port calls. They're happy to stay on the ship and play their games and have their free or already paid for meals.
Well, that's the thing. They've already really sunk quite a bit of money into the cruise, and so they're not necessarily coming off and spending their money in the community. Having said that, can you give us an idea of how important cruises still are to our overall travel industry, tourism industry here in Hawaii?
Well, the overall answer is not that important. It's a small fraction of the number of visitors we have. The reason it's more important than that sounds is because there are businesses on all 4 of the major islands that depend heavily on cruise visitors. They cater to that. And so they're not very busy when there aren't any cruises, but when it's boat day, all of a sudden they make all their money for that entire month serving all the people who do come ashore on tenders. And so that's an important difference. For many of the hotels, it's no big deal, but for the people who are catering to cruise visitors, this is a crisis of the first water.
And so we've had 2 now, the one last Sunday and the one that's in port now. When we can look forward to them coming back, it's not going to be anywhere near pre-COVID times, correct?
No, there'll be fewer ships, and the ships that come will have fewer passengers because of CDC regulations, and also the fact that there are some regular cruises who are waiting for it to be a little safer. So you're right, it's going to be a fraction of the normal business. But the cruise lines depend on this, and they are looking forward to coming back as soon as they feel they can.
Very good. Howard Dykes, thanks for shedding a little bit more light on that, having discussion with us. Let's send things over to Mark with more news.
Investigators are trying to determine what caused a medical helicopter to crash outside Philadelphia yesterday. The aircraft was carrying a 2-month-old baby to a hospital when it went down. Officials say it was a miracle that none of the 4 people on board suffered life-threatening injuries. Many are calling the pilot a hero for being able to hover low, avoid power lines, and keep everyone alive.
Well, I was sitting in my office on the 2nd floor, and I heard the chopper basically, it sounded like it was right over top of the roof. It got so close, so I looked out the window, saw the shadows of the propellers, and then I saw it drop out of the sky, looking out the window, of course, ending up at the church over there. So it was, I ran out. As soon as I saw it, I knew exactly that it had crashed.
Former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid will lie in state today at the U.S. Capitol. The 82-year-old died last month after a 4-year battle with pancreatic cancer. During his time in Congress, Reid helped pass President Obama's signature health care law.
China is dealing with multiple COVID outbreaks, and in some areas, officials are actually welding shut the doors of people suspected of having COVID. All of this a month before the start of the Winter Olympics in Beijing. Elizabeth Palmer has more.
With a budget of nearly $4 billion, Chinese Winter Olympic venues are showstoppers. President Xi got to watch the athletes practicing last week and toured the facilities. But behind the upbeat photo op is a vast, invasive effort to stop COVID spoiling the games. Public health SWAT teams are testing 14 million people for the second time in 3 days after an Omicron outbreak in Tianjin, which is commuting distance from Beijing. One citizen posted a video showing panicked people at a market trying to stockpile food. They'd heard stories from the city of Jian, where officials had to step in and deliver meals to some residents in their second week of complete lockdown, who said they'd run out of things to eat. Also in Jian, local officials welded shut the door of a man suspected of having been exposed to the virus. Massive testing is going on in other cities too, with home visits to make sure no one slips through the cracks. And China has launched a huge booster program, offering shots to anyone over 3 years old. Authoritarian China wants a COVID-free Olympics to impress the world, even though there won't be any foreign spectators, and all athletes will be sealed in what's meant to be a virus-free bubble. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News.
And it is Sony Open week at WWII Country Club. Some of the best in golf are out at the links for the latest stop on the PGA Tour. Unlike last year, the event is open to spectators, and all who attend must either show proof of vaccination or a negative test 48 hours prior to entry. As for the actual tourney play, typically the Open yields low scores, And Turning Director Ray Stosik broke down the course conditions with our Guy Hoggy this morning on Sunrise.
It won't be 30-something under like it was last week.
Okay.
We have 4-inch rough this year.
Okay.
In years past, we tried to get at that, but the weather conditions didn't comply. So I think the players that keep it in the short grass are going to do fine. If you're in the rough, yeah. So we're expecting good scores, but not like last week.
Yeah, and you got a star-studded field. Go over the names, namely the guy that won the tournament last year, and the guy that just came from Kapalua who won Camp Smith.
Yeah, 2 of the 3 finishers last week at Kapalua. Cameron Smith is teeing off in the Pro-Am today at 7:10 if you want to come out and see him. And Matt Jones is also in there. Bryson DeChambeau was committed to the field. He hurt his wrist on Sunday afternoon finishing his play up, and so we miss him this week, but we got a great field.
Round 1 tees off tomorrow, but today is all about the Pro-Am, which includes Mark Wahlberg and June Jones. The sights and sounds later this evening on Hawaii News Now.
Oh, Mark, always an exciting time. And I don't know if you know this about me, but I have just started my golf career. So I want to ask you a couple of things about the Sony Open because a dear friend of mine actually is getting me a ticket. I'm going to get to go Friday. We're going to do the show. I'm going to go a little later.
Good stuff.
I got hooked up. I got the skybox and stuff. And I know, I guess my question is, in this grand scheme of PGA tournaments, these big PGA tournaments, what is the Sony Open? What does it mean for the PGA, for the sport of golf? How big of a deal is it? Really?
Oh, it's extremely meaningful to the entire PGA and the tour and all the athletes that are involved because this is kind of the point in the year where the golfers come down before they come down to WWII Country Club. They're at Kapalua, so it kind of gears up, right? And then the Masters is going to be here before you know it. So it's a crucial part of the PGA Tour schedule where, all right, you get to enjoy Maui, you get to enjoy Oahu, WWII Country Club, and then it really ramps up. And it's so meaningful for, the state of Hawaii and also WWII Country Club. We talked with Tournament Director Ray Stosik earlier this week about how awkward it was last year.
With no fans.
With no spectators at all. And one of the things that stood out that he said was, there were instances last year in the COVID year where you had golfers nailing a birdie or an eagle, no roar of the gallery, anything like that. They're high-fiving themselves, and so it really was an eerie feeling. And so to get back out there on the course, to see the grandstands up again, to see the skyboxes, which you will be enjoying later this week.
Tell me a little bit about what to expect. So it's much more than golf out there. You can see legit celebrities out there at WWII, right?
Well, yeah. Mark Wahlberg is in the Pro-Am today, as well as former University of Hawaii head football coach June Jones. And it's just so great to get out into the mix. It is a beautiful course for someone that just got into golf. WWII Country Club is elite. All right, that is a showstopper course right there.
I would cherish the opportunity. I have a couple of friends that I work for that have memberships at WWII. I think that's a far off dream for me. But even just to play that course, it's gorgeous.
Oh yeah, it is absolutely stunning, and the field is stacked. You got Hideki Matsuyama, you got Kevin Ma, who won the tournament last year, Bryson DeChambeau. A lot of the spectators we spoke with earlier this week were stoked to see Bryson DeChambeau. Unfortunately, at Kapalua on Sunday, he suffered a wrist injury, which forced him to pull out of the Sony Open. But just to have it out there and to be back and to get to a sense of normalcy again with this tournament is great.
I'm so fortunate and grateful that I get to go check it. And, they should be grateful for the fact that they're going to have some pretty decent weather. We have a good look at what they can expect out at WWII. Let's check in with Billy V.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather for you. First, we'll start with the surf. Big numbers, and the reason why is because the high surf warning is in effect for the north and west facing shores. That's all the highlighted areas across the map. And once again, dangerous conditions exist. That's because the numbers are big. Surf peaked last night. It's on the way down this morning. It's kind of bottoming out and climbing as we go through the afternoon. So once we get through the afternoon hours, North Shore is going to be 18 to 22 plus. West side, 12 to 16 plus. You want to be in the dry sand. Check with lifeguards first. And once again, it's only for the professionals, the ones that just really know what they're doing out there. Forecast for today, 81 degrees to your daytime high, mostly sunny skies with some spotty showers. Here in the noon hour, variable winds, light and variable, and it's going to be like that way all the way through the rest of the day. And as we take a look at the 7-day forecast, it's going to be like that all the way through the weekend and into next week. You see light and variable winds, kind of dry conditions. We'll have sunshine in the mornings, blue skies. We'll get maybe some sprinkles in the afternoon. And then overnight, some cooler temperatures. You look at it, 67, 66. Some places got to 60 degrees like Mililani earlier this morning. We're going to have this kind of weather all the way through the weekend until next week. Get the latest on air, online, on your mobile device, and at HawaiiNewsNow.com.
And we are checking out news from the feed on this Wednesday. After much anticipation, the world is getting its first glimpse of Japan's giant twin panda cubs. Lele and Zhao Zhao were born in June, and today marked their public debut. 500 lucky winners entered a lottery for an opportunity to see the bears. Those who see the pandas in person only have 1 minute to view them. They only weighed about 100 grams at birth, but now are 14 kilograms each. Absolutely massive.
1 minute to go see them in and out. You gotta love the setup there. Staying in Japan, how about this? A self-driving boat is being tested near Tokyo. The vessel features artificial intelligence sensors that adjust to avoid collisions and ensure a smooth commute. We want to pull up the video here that we have. Yeah, no, this is really great stuff. Now, this is part of an effort to address a labor shortage of pilots to operate the boats. The country hopes to have this technology be wide scale in about 3 years. So, self-driving cars, the natural evolution, self-driving boats. How about that?
Love it.
And one more story that we want to get to here at home. And Oahu man's heroism in World War II earned him the highest honor Congress can bestow on Filipinos who fought during the war. He wasn't alive to receive the honor, but his story lives on. Here's Jim Mendoza.
When the U.S. military fought against the Empire of Japan's forces in the Philippines, Joe Paris and other Filipinos defended their homeland. Lana Paris says her father was a brave man.
As a young man, my dad was a Filipino scout during World War II.
At the start of World War II, Paris was on the island of Corregidor, where he was badly wounded in battle. Later, he was among thousands of Filipinos and U.S. troops forced to make the brutal 65-mile Bataan death march to a Japanese prisoner of war camp.
Many, many people died, suffered because of starvation, brutality, abuse, and just to go through the march itself.
When Americans freed the POWs, Paris refused to leave another Filipino soldier behind. It led to a lasting bond.
Here it is, 2022. Our families are still connected. 3 generations on, the children and the grandchildren know each other.
Paris reached the rank of Sergeant First Class in the U.S. Army. He would survive 2 more wars, Korea and Vietnam. He retired after 40 years of service, eventually moving his wife and children to Hawaii, where he worked for the federal government.
If not for my dad's military service, I wouldn't be here talking to you today.
His war wounds contributed to his death in 1988 at the age of 69. He and his wife are buried at Punch Bowl.
Joe Paris was a very special man, and I think he was ahead of his time.
Last summer, Congress posthumously awarded Paris the Congressional Gold Medal for his distinguished achievements.
Makes me proud of my heritage. It makes me very proud of my father.
Paris also received the Purple Heart, Prisoner of War Medal, and the Bronze Star. His service to the Philippines and the United States went above and beyond the call of duty. Jim Mendoza, Hawaii News Now.
Jim, thank you